Now let's talk a little bit more about sketching itself. We will start with the basic elements of sketching, which are lines. And the most basic lines that we will be using are horizontal and vertical lines. So one way to draw straight horizontal lines or vertical lines is to use the edge of the paper, the edges, to guide your trace. To do this, what I will do is to add a stack of paper below my sketching paper. If you are using a sketching pad, then you naturally have your edges already built in. And the way to draw, for example, a vertical line here is to support one of your fingers or one part of your hand firmly to the edge and slide it across it, and with the tip of the pencil then you draw the line, but you're always keeping your hand rigid so that it follows a straight edge of the page. So for example, if I would like a vertical line which passes through this point here, what I would do is to put my hand here, adjust the length of the pencil so that it passes exactly through there. And then with a very rigid hand, you don't need to look at what you're tracing, you just need to concentrate on your finger following the edge and your hand remaining rigid. So what you would do is something like, I'm just going to practice here my sliding, and then you would do something like this. So in this way, you can produce a fairly straight line, which is parallel to the border of the page. I want to draw a parallel line which passes through this point, then what I can do is to, again, reposition my hand, adjust the length of the pencil tip, how much it protrudes from my hand, and then again I practice a little my sliding, and I do make my line. So this way you can make some lines which are more or less parallel, using the edge of the paper as a guide. For horizontal lines, well, what you can do is simply to flip the page and follow the same strategy. So you could do something like this. And you end up here with nearly 90-degree angles. If you want to do an inclined line, well, you can always slope your page, do something like this, for example. So lines are nearly straight, and you have some control over the direction. Now, in general, you're going to have lines which are neither horizontal nor vertical, or when they're sloped, they are a bit further into the page, so then you cannot use the edge of the page. One thing that you can do is to draw, for example, 2 points where the line begins and ends, and then you can, before you draw, you can make a very, very slight trace to practice your hand motion, and once you're ready, that you're more or less confident that you have the right path, then you can draw the line between the two. So, say for example, I would like to draw a triangle. I'm better at myself, in my case, I'm better at drawing horizontal lines, or a bit with a slope in this direction from lower left to higher right. I end up with something more straight. So I try to position the paper in the position that it suits me more to draw lines. So for example, I would like to draw a line between these two. So I do something like this. And now to close the triangle, I flip the paper again, put it into my right position, my best position, and then draw my lines. So in this way, you can sketch fairly quickly straight lines. If they are longer, you can try to fill in with some middle points so that you join by segments, and then always before you draw, kind of practice the trajectory to see that you have the right motion. Now it's good to use the motion of the whole arm and not only the wrist, because if you only move the wrist, then naturally you draw an arc if you only move the wrist. So if you want a straight line, then you need to move from the shoulder down your arm as nearly as a unit, right? And adjust just the extension of your fingers and wrist. So for example, this, I could draw something like this. Well, I got it wrong here. Just put it into my best position, and then I would do something like this. Right? And we keep an eye on the finishing point rather than at the beginning while we're doing our motion. So there, it's more or less a straight line. So you can do in this way several traces, and then you can draw lines with slopes, and always practice your trace before you actually mark the final line. Right? So this is how we can draw lines. Now, drawing curves is a bit more tricky, but you can also use the same technique. So for example, if we would like to draw a curve that passes through this point, then you could draw arches that go from one to the other, and then correct your traces so that they pass to the right point and with the right slope so that they look like a continuous line. So for example, could be this, something like that. One important application is to draw circles, and circles can be derived from squares. So we can draw a square. Let me try to draw it here. What we can do is something like this. Say, equal the page. So very roughly, should be something like this. And circles, if a circle is going to be inscribed in this square, then we would need it to be tangent to the size of the square exactly at the middle points. And one way to draw it then is to draw small curves, small arches around these points, to which is going to be tangent to each of them. And then these small arches are then easier to join to come up with a final circle shape. Something like this. And of course we can correct. And then at the end we draw what we find the best trajectory for our line, circular line, or something like this. This is not very circular, but it looks okay. So it gives a circle of the right dimensions, approximately in the right position. So probably here I should mark it a bit lower, something like this. Here the camera is a bit inclined, so it looks a bit like an oval. Correct. So this is one way to draw circles. Now, another important point is when we are drawing shapes, we need to take into account not only the plane of the paper, but we need to take the depth also in consideration. So one way to do this is by using a technique called perspective. And to let's say, for example, we would like to draw a cube. What we start with is by drawing a point, which we call the vanishing point, and then we draw the front face of our cube. Say it's going to be this square. And then what we do is to project from the vanishing point to each of the corners of the square a line. And this will tell us where the size of the square should be oriented, how they should be oriented, right? So all vertical lines remain vertical, and instead of horizontal lines, now I have lines which are sloped according to the relationship between the edges and the vanishing point. So what I have is this. So this will be a cube drawn in perspective, and this is called one point perspective because I only have one vanishing point. So what is this? Is the vanishing point. So in this way I draw a cube. So vanishing point, and then horizontal lines remain horizontal, vertical lines remain vertical. So horizontal in this direction, and then the other direction they point to the vanishing. Now another type, this is one point perspective. Another type of perspective is the 2-point perspective, and for this what we need to do is to draw what we call the horizon line, which is a horizontal line, and we draw two vanishing points, preferably not close to each other because then the objects appear a bit distorted. And from here we can draw a cube as well. We can start with a line, and depending on where we want the cube to be aligned, if we want it to be aligned with our eye side, so this would be our eye side where the horizon line is. So if we want to look square into the center of the cube, we would put a line here, which would be, say, this edge. We would face it here, and then we will see the cube exactly in front of us. If we want to draw a cube which is below our eye level, then we draw the line somewhere below. So say, for example, here. And here we could get a glimpse of the top. So say, for example, we would like to draw this cube. What we do is then to project from each of these points a line to each of the vanishing points. So one vanishing point is here. I'm going to draw it this direction. The other vanishing point is here. So we draw something from here to here, and from here to here. So this will be two faces of the cube. So now again, vertical lines remain vertical in 2-point perspective, and from this what we can get are the next vertices of the cube, which are here. And then to express where the top face will be, we need to draw from each of these vertices lines to each of the vanishing points. So we have one which will go about here, and the other one which will go about here. Notice that this side and this side are not parallel here because they are at different heights with respect to the horizon. So the slope changes a little there. So there we have a cube, and it's below our eye level, so we can have a clear glimpse of the top of the cube. So basically the cube will be this. Or something similar. Now, how would the cube look if it were above our eye level? Well, say we put it very, very high here. This is going to be the edge. So we follow the same technique. We project from each of the edges to the vanishing points. And then we draw the sides. Vertical lines remain vertical. I think the other side will be somewhere here. Actually, it's too far. And then from these new vertices that we found, we draw lines to the vanishing point. So from here to here. And from here to here. Right, and this would give us then the bottom face of the cube. Top. So this is a cube which is above our eyesight, which is here, and therefore we can see the bottom side of the cube. So this is two-point perspective. Now, one thing which is difficult and often used or required in sketches is to draw circles in perspective, or in three dimension, and this is a little bit tricky because the circles are deformed into ellipses, and the proportions between the ellipses are difficult to get right when we are looking in this sort of distorted view, which is three-dimensional. So the technique to do that is first to locate the mid-size of the cube. I'm going to draw a circle in this face, but obviously it's not going to look circular, but as an ellipse. So what we do is to draw the midpoint of the edge of the cube, and I project it towards the horizon line, and I'm going to try to find the center of the circle. Now the center is not going to be exactly here, the middle between these two lines, because distances appear very big when they're close to us, but they appear smaller when they're far to us. So the center of the circle will be a little bit towards this side. Right? So we're going to see it. And what we do, we project this edge to the horizon line, and then we make a little diagonal here between these 2 points, and wherever they cross, this will be the center of the circle. You can also draw a line. This one should cross exactly at the same point. Right? So if we draw a vertical here, now we have our 4 points to which the circle needs to be tangent. In this case, it will be an ellipse. So we need to draw arcs around here which are tangent to the lines and which pass through this center point. Something like this. So a circle in this face would look something like that. Let's try it again on this face. So we mark the center of the edge, we draw our extension line here to the vanishing point, and then we draw our diagonals. So somewhere here will be the center of the circle, and then we draw some arcs which are tangent to the sides and pass through the middles, and from here we can get a pretty close idea of how the circle will look like on this side. So something like this. So there we have drawn 2 circles in a 2-point perspective. So this is 2-point perspective. There's also a 3-point perspective, but we will not go into that because I think it's not so much used. Now let me build up on the concept of 2-point perspective. Suppose we would like to draw here an edge line of cubes next to this one, and then we have 2 or 3 cubes in the same in a row in this direction or in this direction. So what we need to do here in order to judge the correct size is to draw diagonals which are parallel to this diagonal here. So for example, from this from this vertex, we need to draw a diagonal which is parallel to this one here. So we'll draw it something like this. So this line and this line are parallel to each other. And then the verticals will remain vertical, so the other edge of the cube will be here. So this gives me an idea of the size of the cube, of the same dimension of this one, but placed farther from me and closer to the vanishing point. So this would be the face of the cube. And then the top edge would be, again, we obtain it by joining the vanishing point with this edge. So it will be probably a line which is fairly horizontal. And then from this edge to, well, this is the same line that we had before. So somewhere here should be the other edge. And then we can draw our cube in this way. And we can continue doing this to make a row of cubes. So we draw another line which is parallel to this one here, and then a vertical. And then we would have our third cube here. Notice how they're getting smaller and smaller. This is because in two-point perspective, or in this perspective in general, things which are farther away look smaller. So this would be something like this. And here you have this crooked line. Okay, so that is one use of two-point perspective and how to build a stack of cubes in one direction, or in the direction of one of the vanishing points.